welcome to Wins Women of Wisdom, everyone. Today I am blessed and honored that this person accepted my invitation to be on Wins Women of Wisdom. If I sound just a little nervous, that's because with me on Wins Women of Wisdom today, I have the queen of self-publishing and by the name of Joanna Penn, who runs the fabulous Creative Pen. And as she says, that's pen with a double N. So I am going to ask her a little bit about the Creative Pen, but more about her fiction side, which is under J.F. Penn. And she's going to explain her fiction side, and I'm just going to talk to her about her book. I will ask her baseline questions, but we can go off those baseline questions. So I'm going to let Joanna take it away.
Oh, well, thanks very much for having me, Win. It's lovely of you to have me on your show. And, wisdom is one of those difficult topics, isn't it? But as I said, I'm happy to answer anything that you or your listeners would like to know. And, of course, I'm calling from Bath now. I live in Bath in England.
See, oh, God. See, I knew I would screw something up. I knew I would screw the location up.
Oh, no, I just moved. But if people are wondering, I am British, hence my accent. So, we're have a nice chat today.
I love it. And Joanna actually does a YouTube show, and then she actually transfers the feed into iTunes herself. Her show, The Creative Pen, of course, is phenomenal. I've been following that. I've also followed it on YouTube, and she's had the greats including myself way back when. We talked about I Win in the original episode, and that is just a phenomenal podcast if you guys want to listen to that. Her speakers are phenomenal on her YouTube channel / in her podcast, which is essentially the same thing. And so I'm going to ask why she got into all this, especially why she got into the fiction side, not necessarily the marketing side, but the fiction side.
Well, it's quite funny because the two really go together because, of course, the only reason I started learning about self-publishing and marketing was because I wrote a book. So, the whole point behind everything is always the creation. And I guess I've always been a reader. So my mum talks about when I was a little girl, I didn't carry a teddy around, I carried a book around. So I've always had books, and I've always written journals. So I've been journaling all my life, particularly angsty period when I was 15, I wrote a lot of poetry and so I've always written, and I've got here in my house, I've got about 30 journals that I've written over the years. So what happened was when I left university, I fell into a day job like so many people, and I was very miserable. I was an IT consultant and I hated my job, and I just couldn't work out why was I so miserable doing this job. And so I decided to write a book about helping myself. So I actually started out writing non-fiction, and I wrote a self-help book. I wanted to be like Tony Robbins, and I know you do a lot of motivation, and I wanted to be a motivational speaker. And then what was so funny was in the process of writing non-fiction, I allowed myself to even consider the possibility of writing a novel, because before then, I think many people feel very scared of writing what's in their head because people might think you're completely mad. So I pretty much got into writing fiction after non-fiction, as a sort of test to see if I could. And then once I wrote the first novel, Stone of Fire, now I'm completely addicted. So I've written 10 novels now. I'm just about to release the 11th. So yeah, busy times. So yeah.
Now, you mentioned something on your podcast, and I want to know, have you started it? Have you started dictating your books yet? Because I know you had Monica Leonel on your podcast, who wrote the book How to Train Your Dragon, and that's nothing having to do with the movie How to Train Your Dragon. That is having to do with dragon naturally speaking. And you said, I'm going to start dictating my books in 2016. Well,
Yeah, we're still in November. Come on.
she's laughing at me because she knew
Well,
I was going to ask that question. She's laughing at me. Oh, come on.
oh no, I
please.
actually what's so funny you say that, because really it's for a first draft. You have to do the first draft with dictation. You can't edit with dictation.
No,
And so
you can't.
I'm actually well, you can if you try really hard. But so tomorrow, it's actually funny we're talking about this now. So I've just finished Risen Gods, and I've almost finished that. So I'm actually, tomorrow is my first day of starting dictation, and I'm doing a short story. I'm just going to start with a short story and see how it goes. But you know, we all know, and I know you do a lot of physical therapy, you know, in your life. And I, as an author, you know, I feel really unfit to kind of sitting here. And so I think for authors, it's very good to be moving. So I'm going to try the dictation and see what happens. But I think, you know, if people are struggling with writing, dictation can be really powerful, because you don't have to type to actually write. I mean, you can write by hand, but you can also speak. And many people find that easier than typing.
That's how I do all my books, including my homework, you guys. And I admit that in my original book, I Come Win, that's how I finished the dang book, is used Apple's Siri to dictate it. And it takes Siri a long time to understand the dictation, but she can do it if you give it a chance. Dictation is actually a wonderful tool, and I'm a big fan of dictation due to I can't type due to my disability. I have cerebral palsy, as you guys know by now, and Joanna knows that too. And so I can't type. So I figured, well, might as well make technology work for me, not against me.
Yeah, and we're so lucky that now technology allows us these things, and you know, it means that you can write just as well as anybody else. So yeah.
But you can't edit.
No.
Listen to me and Joanna. You can't edit a book on using Siri. You need to either send it to an editor or edit yourself. You can't edit a book using Siri. That is one thing I have learned, and I don't think you can edit a book using Dragon either. Although maybe you can. If you say the commands, like period, you could, but that would defeat the purpose. So, my next question is, are you doing NaNoWriMo? No, you've given up because it's the middle of the month and you can't start anything in the middle of the month, especially NaNoWriMo, and you have just moved. So, are you doing it or no?
No, I mean, I did the first book, Stone of Fire. I actually wrote the first 20,000 words I did in NaNoWriMo. So I think Nano is a brilliant thing. And if people don't know, it's National Novel Writing Month, and your aim is to write 50,000 words in a month. So I haven't done it for a couple of years. It never seems to fit with my timing. You know, I'm right now finishing the editing and the copy editing of one book, and then tomorrow I'll start another one. But I think it's a very powerful thing to do timed writing. But it doesn't have to be within November. But if people are just, if you've missed November, that's no excuse. You can start any time. You don't have to wait a whole nother year to start. So I think it's a brilliant thing. But no, I didn't do it this year. And I was going to start writing another novel tomorrow. But now I've seen this competition that Stephen King is going to judge. And Stephen King is like my favorite author. So I'm like, I've got to write a short story for Stephen King just on the off chance he might ever read it.
Just on the off chance. Just on the off chance. Well, you never know. You never know.
Exactly.
When I said, can I interview you, I was blown away when you said yes. So that means that you never know who's going to read your work and who is going to follow you and who's going to follow your project. Now, how many... It's not a story necessarily you're writing for Stephen King. It's an essay, correct?
No, it's a short story. It's got to be a short story. He's given a prompt. And I think this is a nice thing. It's very important to not get too obsessive around everything we're writing. In the end of the day, it's meant to be fun. So, writing a fiction story, whether it's a short story or a novella or a novel, it's fun. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to write a fun story for Stephen King and submit it to this short story competition. So it is a story, and because it's Christmas coming up, and I've moved to Bath, which is a medieval city. There's this medieval abbey, and it's next to the 2,000-year-old Roman baths. I'm going to write like a pagan Christmas murder thing, and it's fun.
Dead cool. That's dead cool.
Exactly, very dead.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you this. Mm-hmm. What is your biggest life lesson?
It is a tough question, the whole life lesson thing. I think it's really about deciding what you want, and everything else follows from that. And I think the problem is that most people answer that the wrong way. So if you'd have asked me when I was 22, whatever, what I wanted, I would have said, I want money, and I want to, have a house and a husband, and, all this, and I want to have an amazing job and all this. And when you actually think, what's more important for me now, what's more important is that I have freedom. So the word freedom to me is more important than owning a big house and a posh car and all the things that you're meant to want in your life. So when I decided about 8 years ago now that what I wanted was freedom, that made me choose certain things. So for example, I chose to sell everything. We sold our house, we sold the car, we sold everything. We own very little, and I really love living a very simplified life. And what I want to achieve is a body of work, a body of creative work in the world, and be like Stephen King, having millions of readers love him, but also all these books in the world. So, and also making decisions around the life I wanted to live. So I like to travel, and to spend money on traveling and experience rather than things. And that's not for everyone. The type of life I'm living is not for everyone, but deciding that freedom was the important thing, not having a, proper job and a car and a house and everything. These things, and I think if people just spent a bit more time really thinking about what they want and their definition of success, that would help change their lives more than just assuming that what they want is what everybody else says they should want.
I agree. I agree with that statement completely. You have to come up with what you want and write it down and put it out to the universe. I've put something out to the universe, and hopefully that would come back to me. My ultimate goal is to transfer out of my day job and become a full-time writer and hit the New York Times bestseller list, although that won't happen because you and I are both self-published, and I think the New York Times has kind of banned the
No,
self-publishing.
no, they haven't. No,
That
that's not true. So, firstly, I hit the New York Times and the USA Today list, so it can be done. But what they've done is ban multi-author box sets. So,
okay?
but plenty of indie authors hit the New York Times list every single week.
That's that's what I want. That's why I
Yeah.
asked the
So you can
expert this
absolutely
one.
do that. But what I would add to that is there are things that we think are important, and then you achieve them and you realize they're not important.
No,
So
no, no. Realize
transitioning out of
no.
your day
Maybe
job is a better goal, because that implies a lot more sustainable life than just a spike. And so yeah, and I think writing. But for me now, it's so funny because I've hit a lot of the goals that I had before when we first met, and now my goals are more creative goals around writing certain books and putting out like writing the short story is just writing the short story is kind of the goal. So that the process of writing is a reward in itself at this point. And yes, I like
yes,
to sell books and hit rankings, but
yes,
the most important thing is the idea and the fun I have writing and the travel, because I travel a lot for my research.
yes.
So I'm
I know you
planning
do.
I'm
I
planning a trip to America next year, and I'm thinking, well, where can I go, and where shall I write a book about?
I hear that you're coming out to my neck of the woods, 4 hours away from me in Denver, Colorado, and I've been thinking about that. You should probably do something along the lines of the American West or the the English settlers, or probably a combination of both, because won't that be a research trip even though it will be a speaking trip?
Well, I don't know about the Denver one, but I would definitely be going. I really love the Grand Canyon. Like, I want to do a giant rafting tour down the Colorado River, and it's the Colorado River, isn't it? The one in the
Yes,
Grand Canyon, and
yes.
but I also want to go to New Orleans and write something about the kind of occult stuff.
Oh,
I'm much more into
geez.
occult than settlers. So, but
Yeah,
this is the thing. There are story ideas everywhere,
yeah,
and what I love about writing fiction is that you can write whatever you like. Like, don't listen to people who say you should write this or you should write that. It's just write what you love. And what's so amazing about the internet is you will find people who love what you do as well.
yeah. And I've decided that I wrote one memoir, I Come a Win, and now I'm slowly but surely working on my second memoir. But I've decided memoirs are too heavy for me to write. I like
Yeah, they're no
fiction.
fun.
I like fiction better. I like my teen series better than I like my writing memoirs, because you can visualize what it would be like and put it in a book. I mean, you can visualize what it would be like and put it in a book. And that being said, how did you come up with the concept, which I think is fascinating, for Day of the Viking?
Well, Day of the Vikings is set in the British Museum, and it opens at a Viking exhibition. And that's what happened. I went to the British Museum and there was a Viking exhibition. And I went in there, and I love the British Museum in London. It's beautiful, and it's got this massive glass roof above a big hall. And so I went into the Viking exhibition, and if any, you can get the book for free at
Yes,
jfpenn.com, and it's
yes,
there.
which I did.
Oh,
And
well, there we
it's
go.
phenomenal.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
phenomenal. I don't tell anyone. I sat in the hallway at work, and then a book, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great. And at least I'm reading a history book, and at least it was on my iPhone, so the kids couldn't see what I was doing. But if they asked me, I would say I'm reading a history book, and they would leave me alone.
Well, what was funny was we went to this exhibition, and there was this staff there, and what they did with the witches, the shamans, is they would roll up their staffs and bury them to stop the magic. And I just looked at this and went, "That's a story." And then if the description of the place is as it was, and there was this big pile of bones, and these bones with all these decapitated bones and things from the Vikings, and of course that's in the book as they kind of anyway they come to life, and it's very exciting.
Yeah,
and
we're not giving all of it away.
we're not giving it away, but the opening scene, the whole thing is set in a real place, and the big glass ceiling, something happens with that, and it's all very exciting. But also I wanted to get I have two series, the Arcane series and also the London Psychic series, and I wanted to blend the two of them in this book. So it's got Morgan Sierra from the Arcane series and Blake Daniel from the other series, and they're in the same book together. So it was something I wanted to write, but it just worked really well, and it was so much fun.
It did. Now, I haven't read your other series. I must download your other series on my iPhone because your work is phenomenal. I decided before interviewing you, I said, okay, I'm going to read her work no matter how long it takes me. And before I interview her, because I figured that would be the best way to do it.
Oh, well, thank you. And of course, one doesn't ever expect anyone to read all the books, but, it's lovely. What's so lovely about fiction is people can find a story at any point. It doesn't have to be new. So, so much of nonfiction, people want to read the latest book that was published this year was a story. I'm picking up stories now that were published 100 years ago, 50 years ago, a year ago. So what's so lovely is that, people can find it any time and still enjoy it.
And what's happening now is a tip I actually learned from you is to make your books not necessarily in a series, but make them in a series, but make them standalone as well. So if people pick up one book, they don't have to pick up the whole series, and they can get the gist from that one book, even though we recommend that they start from book 1 to book 5, or whatever, book 10. But make your books standalone so that people don't have to feel obligated to pick up the whole series.
Yeah, totally. And that's what's fun as well. Like the book, all my books are standalone and also in, a series. And that's, I think, because readers like to come back for the same experience. It's like the reason readers want to watch these kind of episodic TV shows, is because they want the same characters, but they want a different story. Like they want a different adventure or a different mystery, but they want the same characters. So I'm doing that with my characters, and there's a new supernatural mystery every book, but the character, Morgan Sierra and Jake Timber and the Arcane Supernatural Mystery Agency, it's still this. There are some things that stay the same. It's just the adventure is a different adventure. And what I love is coming up with what's the next one going to be, and the next one will be set in a lot of it will be set in India and will be called Destroyer of Worlds, and it'll be super fun. Yeah.
How cool is that? How cool is that? I have a question for you. You said I have beta readers. How does one get to be one of your beta readers?
Well, my beta readers now, at the beginning, I used to have a lot more. And for people who don't know, a beta reader is not an editor, so they're not usually paid. They are somebody who reads the book because they are a big fan of the book, and they have to
read.
Yeah, they want to read,
but they paid to read the book.
But they read it before publication and offer help. Now, I used to have a lot more, but now I only have beta readers before publication who are experts. So for the book that's out next week, Risen Gods, I have a volcanology expert, so a guy who knows about volcanoes, and a Maori guy who's advising me on mythology and spelling and cultural heritage. So mostly beta readers now are more for kind of technical help rather than just reading.
So is this book I know it's based in New Zealand, but is this book based off the Maoris, or are we using a version of the Maoris, or what?
So it's set in a modern New Zealand, and there are obviously a lot of Maori people who live in New Zealand, and so the main male character is Maori, and the female character is a white New Zealander, and basically they're out. It opens with they're out sailing, and they look out to the horizon, and there's the big tidal wave, and then the country starts to get destroyed, and the volcanoes erupt, and there's demons and gods, and it's all a lot of fun. But basically, it's a set in the modern day, as all my books are, but it has a strong supernatural angle, and this one is based on the mythology and the worldview of Maori New Zealanders.
Well, I may have to sit in the hallway and read that one too. And
that was a lot of fun.
Reading a history book, because even though it's set in modern day place, it still has history.
Yes, has history, and it has, religious kind of stuff, and I think it'll be really interesting. And I know a lot of Americans love New Zealand, from afar. Everybody wants to go to New Zealand, right?
Yes, they do. They do.
And I lived there for 7 years, so I write with a love of the country. But it's at the end of the day, it sits on the Pacific Rim of Fire. It's full of volcanoes and earthquakes. So it's one of those really interesting places.
Well, I spent half my life in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, actually. And so basically all of my life up until my early 20s. So when I write a book about the Bahamas, I'm doing, and I should do another one, I should do one of my novels based on the Bahamas. I'm doing that with a love for the country, just like you're doing Wizard Gods, the love of the New Zealanders, because you spent so much time in that culture, just as I did. I spent so much time in the Caribbean culture and in the Bahamas that we can do a book in our sleep, basically.
Well, you still need a good story and some characters, but yes, it's I think it's very good to ground. I mean, I write modern day thrillers, so I set things in the real world. So, the real world plus some demons, I suppose. But unless you're writing sci-fi, or you're writing in a fantasy world, But even like George R. R. Martin, Game of Thrones, people love Game of Thrones, I think. Even though it's a fantasy world, it's still recognizable as a sort of European, it's actually, the wall is, above the wall is Scotland, and, it's very recognizable British and European history. So I think people like to have an anchor to something real when they're reading fiction. And with my kind of thrillers, I like to make things as real as possible, so that when I put in something supernatural, you think it's real.
Yes. So you make it as real as possible, then you throw in the supernatural character.
So something happens and it's like, well, it's so real, everything else is real, this might be real. And that's the kind of cool thing there, the little twist.
So what? Okay. I have a business contact, and she's not really a friend, but she writes about vampires, and I interviewed her on her business stuff on my podcast too. I didn't get into details about her books, but what do you think about the big fascination with vampires? I mean, it's Vampires City, and I picked up her book and started reading it on vacation. I had to put it down because it just didn't sit well with me, whereas your book, I could read in a hallway, and that sat well with me. But what do you think about these new indie authors writing about vampires? I mean, vampires is the next best thing.
Well, I think what you have to remember is there's so many, like if you go on Amazon, there are millions and millions of books, and there are these little subgenres where people are writing. Now, I don't, you at that point were seeing vampire books everywhere. I don't see vampire books everywhere because I shop in a different area on Amazon. So I see conspiracy thriller everywhere, and action adventure everywhere. So firstly, it's about what the reader likes. So people like different books. So I like conspiracy thriller, religious thriller. If there is the word, Bible or codex or something in the title, or holy, or, I have a master's in theology. I like religious stuff. If I see that, I will buy that book. I love Dan Brown. Well, his original stuff, I like that stuff. So that's what I write because that's what I read. Now, I don't read vampire stuff either. It's not my thing, but there will always be people who love vampires. It's not an indie author thing. It's a reader thing, like Anne Rice. Anne Rice is in her 70s, I think. Now she wrote Interview with a Vampire back in the early 80s, I think. And that sparked the first massive vampire craze. And then Twilight. 10 years ago, I think, Twilight now. Yeah. That was the second vampire craze. And now, of course, we've got really quite interesting vampire stuff in different ways. The zombies, I mean, you could say that zombies are everywhere. People just like genres, like romance books. Romance readers devour romance books. There are more romance books than any other kind of genre. So I think you just have to consider that we all like reading different things, and that as a writer it's very important too, because not everybody will read your books. Like my mum doesn't like my books, my husband doesn't like my books, my best friend doesn't like my books. That they are not my audience. My audience are people who like, Stephen King or some of the religious thriller stuff, John Connolly, that type of thing. Yes. So that's the important thing for us to think about as writers and as readers.
And I know my listeners will want to know this. Have you ever gotten a bad review on one of your books? And what do you personally do about it?
Yes, of course. Everybody gets bad reviews. And I think the most important thing there is to consider that the best-selling, like the most top-selling books in the world, like go look at Harry Potter or go look at what won the latest Pulitzer Prize. Everybody gets bad reviews. So bad reviews are not a big deal. Yeah. I personally don't look at my reviews. I just don't look at them. No. So I don't look at the good ones because there's no point, and I don't look at the bad ones because there's no point. No, there's no point either way. We all need reviews, and of course we would like to have good reviews, and you have to care about getting them, but I don't read them because either they make me feel like I've got a big head or I feel utterly crushed and miserable. Yeah,
me too. It's
so
5 stars is 5 stars, and I don't care about the star ranking so much. I care about the honesty, and that's what I'm going to tell my listeners at the end of this podcast. If they want to go find my work, go find it on Amazon. Just leave an honest review. I don't care about the 5 stars. People think that 5 stars make other people happy. Well, if it's not an honest review, especially if it's a fake review, thank you very much, Amazon, then it doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference.
So, I mean, obviously I love getting good reviews and things, but I think the most important thing is getting on with the next book and remembering that you will get better. Like, everybody gets better. Like, if you practice anything, you will get better. So, of course, the book, my latest Risen Gods, for example, or my last book, Deviants, are better written, like with, the word better in inverted commas, than my first book. But that's just natural. Any author, if you read any author, their first books are never going to be as good as their more recent books. No. That's just life. But what's so interesting to me is that people still, like Stone of Fire, which is also free on all ebook stores, that still gets amazing reviews. That's my first novel, and it does incredibly well. It's got like 450 reviews, and does incredibly well. So what we think of our books has nothing to do with what the reader does, and we should just write the books, put them out there, and see what happens.
Write the books, put them out there, and see what happens. That is the best piece of advice throughout this whole thing that you can give me and my listeners out there who follow me and who follow this program. And I told you guys that I kind of hinted that today would be happening, but I didn't really hint, so I kind of let the cat out of the bag. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to ask you about Kindle and KDP and all that good stuff. I know, and I believe in the same thing you do wholeheartedly. I know that you don't believe in Kindle Select and Kindle being exclusively on Kindle. You believe in iBooks, you believe in Nook, you believe in Kobo, and you believe in all that. But for the new author out there, and we're not new authors, you and I, we've published books, but what would you say about publishing your first book? Do you say stick with Kindle, or do you say stick with iBooks and go to all around the universe?
Again, you have to decide that for yourself as an author. With your first book, writing the book is the most important thing, and then the publishing aspect, again, it will depend where you are. Like, for example, if there might be listeners in New Zealand where iBooks is the dominant reader, why would they use KDP Select, where they only get published on Amazon? In Canada, Kobo is the biggest market, so why would they just publish on Amazon? So what you've got to think, I think everyone just considers America to be like the only country on earth, but it's not. And so I think as someone, yeah, and I think everyone gets so. I mean, obviously, it is the biggest ebook market, and it's very, very important. But for many authors, they're not in America, and what the other stores may give them a better chance of selling more books in their country than Amazon. But of course, in America, Amazon is the number one reader. And if you are a new author and you're only publishing one book, like, seriously, if you are only going to publish one book, then sure, go KDP Select, do what you like. But one book is not going to make you much money or, get you very far. So what you have to decide.
Not going to make you much money.
No,
and
so you have to sorry.
Wholeheartedly. I say that wholeheartedly, and what you have to decide is, okay, whether I'm in this for long haul, or do I want to do it one book and that's it?
Yeah, so I helped my dad write his first book, and then I helped him self-publish, and we just put it on KDP Select because I said to him, look, Dad, you don't know if you're going to write another book, and he hasn't. He's only written the one, and I just said, well, we'll just put it on Amazon. It's the best place to put it if you've only got one book. And then remember, of course, that KDP Select is you basically opt into it if people don't know, and it means you are only on Amazon. It's exclusive to Amazon, but it's only for 90 days. So yes, go into that, and then if you write some more books, then you can opt out and publish everywhere else. So I'm not against KDP Select. I just don't use it because I have, a 7-book series, a trilogy. I have a whole load of nonfiction. I have readers. I have sold books in 68 countries. So I can't just publish now on Amazon because I have readers all over the world who wouldn't be able to buy those books. So again, it's just about where you are in your career and what you want with your career.
Exactly, because you have, as I do, I have international readers that may not be able to pick up a Kindle book, and they may be able to pick up iBooks easier than Kindle.
Exactly.
And so, to each their own. Do whatever you feel comfortable with, but also remember that the market is only so big for these ebook readers like Kindle and like Kobo, and they're predominantly in Canada. Kobo's out of Canada, Kindle's out of India, I think, or US, but just do what you feel best with and just decide, okay, whether I'm in this for the long haul or whether I'm in this for the vanity publishing aspect of it, and then you'll have to take it from there. Joanna and I can't give you advice because we publish books on top of books on top of books. So that's my 2 cents. Just do what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And focus on the writing.
Focus on the writing. I mean, the writing is key. Forget about the cover because you can design the cover yourself essentially. But the writing, a good book, is key. The writing is key, and I've learned that the hard way myself. And what is your greatest accomplishment in life?
Well, I tend to move my goalposts quite a lot, but I think, for a long, long time, I had the goal of living a location independent life, and also hiring my husband out of his job so we could live it together. And we've done that this year. So for me, it's the achievement is more about living every day how I want to live. And it's not it's not an extravagant life. We live, as I said, in a small place, and I go and write. And for me, that's the achievement, is being able to do what I want and create the projects, create the books I want to create. Now, I think I have a lot more goals ahead of me in terms of what I want to do with, the books I write, and the things I can do with my time in terms of helping others. And, I try and help people through my sites to, achieve their dreams of writing a book. But, I think I never really look backwards. I'm always looking forwards and thinking about the next thing and the next book and the next journey, So, lots more ahead.
Well, that is wonderful. And give us your 2 websites. We're going to give you 2 websites. One is called thecreativepen.com, and the other one is called jfpen.com. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And JF Penn, F is for Francis, in case people were wondering. And that's my fiction site, and that's got all my fiction on, and free book, Dare the Vikings, if you fancy that. And thecreativepen.com is for writers.
And for writers. Yeah. And so alter egos here, writer and fiction writer. That's how I consider the 2 websites.
Yeah, they're my two halves of my personality. And I should say
your personality.
And also just to say, I'm at the Creative Pen on Twitter, which is where I prefer to talk to people.
Yes, you're fairly active on Twitter. Yeah. And I am actually on Twitter myself. It's my full name, Win Kelly Charles, @ of course, the @ is the Twitter symbol, @ Win Kelly Charles, and I tend to communicate on Twitter too, not necessarily on Facebook, even though I am on Facebook, but Twitter seems to be the thing for writers, and Twitter seems to be the thing for me. And so if you want to find both of us, just Google either one of our names, and then you'll find every piece of work by the 2 of us on Amazon. Also, our books are all over the place. They're not only on Amazon, they're on Kindle KDP, they're on iBooks, they're on Nook, they're on every place under the sun. All e-readers have Joanna's books, have my books. Just look under my name, my full name, and JF Penn or Joanna Penn on your favorite e-reader platform to find all our books.
Yeah, so, well, thanks ever so much for having me, Win. It's been lovely to talk to
Well, you're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. I didn't think this interview would pull through, but you're welcome. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this fabulous episode, and I hope you gained knowledge out of it, and I hope that you tune in to another fabulous episode of Wynn's Women of Wisdom.